Great to see you all.
Great to see you too. So, good afternoon. It is 4:01 by the computer. We'll get started. Nice to see some smiling faces and see people in person and a rash of people online. So welcome. Sam, I'm trying to think who other board members. Sam, you might be the only board member online at the moment. Yeah.
I think that's going to join us.
Yeah. And Sam, can you hear us?
No, Babette's a maybe.
Sam, can you hear us?
Babette's a maybe.
Yes.
I forgot to-
Okay, thank you. And there's Babette. Babette is just
Joining.
connecting
Yeah,
also.
there she is.
Okay, we'll wait for Babette to connect.
So what's your preferred protocol? Use that unless you're speaking?
I took mine off so that, because some people have theirs off, so it's up to you.
Whatever you like. I think
I don't think I'd ask after people would- just directly. I'm gonna try to go between the two.
Okay, so meeting's called to order. Thank you for everyone who's here in person and online. We have several things to get through today, including the book challenge policy, but first we need to start with the consent agenda, which
Move it.
is,
Yeah, second.
okay, so it's,
Moved and seconded.
I know. Moved by Ed, seconded by Christina. See, now you get to see what I actually do when I'm sitting in front of the computer. So I was just looking at board absences, so we're going back and adding Sam to March. Etta for this month is the only board absence noted. And then the minutes. Any changes? Anything to discuss? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain on the minutes. I wasn't present at the last meeting.
Any noes? And one abstention. Thank you. So pre-reads, we have several pre-reads. I know there's some late pre-reads that went off in email and some that appeared for us in person here. So I don't know. If there are questions, I think, Christian, since we've just gotten your report, are there specific things that you want to highlight?
The main, well, I mean, I would just touch base on it. So there was a partnership with Physical Plant heavy month for me, so I've got some of that stuff in place. One thing that I wanted to raise for the board as a possible conversation point was this partnership with the Literacy Coalition and OCPL. If you're not familiar with the Literacy Coalition, as you know a lot about the Literacy Coalition, I know it's a Onondaga County center space for meeting of agencies who are engaged in literacy in the community. They have quite a small budget, and coming out of COVID, they were discussing whether or not it was worthwhile to hire a new executive director or to kind of farm out the services to another agency who could do the administrative and executive director functions on that. The decision was made to work with the Portland County Communities That Care. They'll be hiring somebody who will be in Onondaga full time to focus on the Literacy Coalition. The executive director from Portland actually lives in Onondaga. Here in the city of Syracuse 1 day a week. In talking to them, as they're kind of redoing the structure a little bit, they need a space to live. And this seemed like a really good opportunity for us to be right at the center of those literacy conversations. It'd be on the same model as the Focal partnership that we have. Focal has an office, you know, tech, telephony, all that kind of stuff. And the idea would be that we would be on a 1-year kind of agreement with them. I wasn't really looking to do anything as formal as an MOU, but I'd be happy to work that up. We would not be charging them rent. Well, what we would do is that we would then be centered in a lot of the conversations at the Literacy Coalition, and they'd be using our rooms for their trainings and meetings and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to see if the board had strong thoughts about that. That was something that they
It makes sense.
Is there, so what does it mean in terms of commitments from the library? Is it just space? Is it?
It's space, a desktop and a telephone, a desktop, a telephone, a printer, and security badges so they can get in and out of the building. We would be looking at one of the offices over here. We're gonna be kind of reconfiguring those offices. And one of those empty offices is the one.
I think I was involved in the formation of this way back. And, it's had its ups and downs, but it's important to keep it going, I think, and maybe this is going to reinvigorate it with the new leadership.
Yeah, it's a good
And
discussion.
It does make sense that at least on a 1-year basis that it be here. Because I think, as I said once before, I think we have more to offer them than they have to offer us. So it could be very symbiotic and work well for both of us.
Mark, is any advantage to us reflecting that as an in-kind? Or can we even do that? Yeah, financial.
Well, related to that, there were times when the controller used to make kind of
County controller?
county controller, not our steward of our, the county controller from time to time would audit the library and make a fuss over the free space for local.
Right.
But we're able to overcome it by saying, if we charge them rent, that's less money they would give to the library. They exist for the library. So that usually overcame it, but, you know, say this is experimental.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that if we made it an in-kind, that would address the same issue.
It might.
I'd be happy to run down details if you have.
Oh, okay.
Is, so since there's, I'm sorry, I'm trying to work out the details. Is it 1% or 2 people?
It would be one person, and then one person really Monday through Friday. And then the executive director would come in on Fridays, share the office space a lot, but I think the intention was that they would be using some of the common rooms for meetings and that kind of stuff that they would have, you know, they would try and maximize his time, you know, in the city by utilizing some other spaces that we can offer. Trainings and that kind of stuff.
Do we need a motion? I'm sure.
It wouldn't hurt to say we support. I'll make a motion to support this proposed space allocation to the Literacy Coalition per year.
And so we would be paying for the printer costs, the phone costs, all of that, and that's okay?
Those costs for Focal are pretty minimal. We would be using something that already exists. Already telephone back there, so there's already a phone in there. There's already a desktop, so we would just not get them.
And you're not printing big folders or things like that? Okay.
It would reflect as an expenditure.
So I believe Ed moved second.
And our second.
Um,
I just wanted to maybe one comment. Our goal, at least me as board members, always wanted to think of ways in which we can get more people into the library. And by housing them here, it's not just 2 people, but it may be that a lot more people, they offer space for meetings. More people will come to the central library, and it can only be a good thing. If it's onerous, we'll look at it next year. Then we'll have to pay some minimum rent or something.
Nice opportunity to put ourselves at the center of the conversation. So as you're talking about people coming.
Right. I meant all encompassing.
okay, so the motion is,
To support the location of the Literacy Coalition in the Central Library space for a year at no cost to the district.
okay, and do we want to list what it includes? So I
You
heard,
could, or just say,
Mhm.
Well, I mean, in the solution that I'm proposing here, I'm asking for a space, a desktop, a printer, and a telephone. I think they can probably buy their
Even
own
just,
office
yeah, like
supplies.
basic office equipment is really what we're talking
basic
about, yeah,
services or basic stuff.
connections, yeah.
And it's understood, we look at it
Oh.
toward the end of the first year and see if we want to adjust it somehow.
any other discussion? Sorry, I have my back to the screen. Sam or Babette?
No, I think that the year that you just laid out makes a lot of sense.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Sam,
Sam
Oh,
has-
sorry, I said aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Um, anything else on Christian's report? Or my report? I do want to point out on my report that there are a number of things that we need to be doing, but one that has popped up because of the legislature is how at some point we'll need to pass a resolution about having virtual meetings. Because even though they have passed something that allows virtual meetings to continue, you actually have to define what an emergency is. And so if Ed said, I don't want to drive to Syracuse because I just don't want to drive, that doesn't work. It's why, what's the emergency that is causing you not to come to the meeting? At least that's the way I read it. And so, not today, but this is something that we'll have to understand and then pass a resolution,
when you say legislature, you mean the state legislature?
state legislation, yep. There's part of the budget vote. There's a wonderful Q&A document on the Committee of Open Government website. But some of the details are left up to the local municipality or local group to decide.
Question.
Yeah.
I know I read it here about we have to do 2 hours of training. It's in here somewhere. I don't see it quickly right now, but so before the end of the year.
Yes.
Yeah, bottom of the first page.
on the board training. I read this thing.
I know.
2 hours.
So anything else? Fine, probably not.
On yours?
Yeah.
I had mentioned to you that, through, but that I would be willing to review the bylaws. I look at a lot of them
Oh,
day to day.
thank you.
And you were looking for somebody, you want to send them to me. I will
I will do
take
that.
a look at them and try and work with you on.
I can send them to the.
Oh, yeah, please.
Thank you, Gail. And then there's a number of other reports. There's the branch highlights. Which is Dawn. Central Library from Renee.
It's exciting to see the bounce back of Central Library.
Can I just ask quickly about, so there was the press conference around going fine free. Is there, like, are there outcomes or, exciting stories or just anything else to kind of add on to that? I know, we all feel like it's important. And so just wanted to get a sense for, if there's anything follow up there.
Sam, we haven't had any real feel good stories yet. Nobody returned a puppy with a dog or a puppy with a book or anything like that yet. But we did have some really good feedback. People have been happy about it out in the branches. Staff was certainly very supportive of it. Jill has a letter that has been put through to the board of the Times Standard. That hasn't been run yet, has it?
The Post
Post
Standard.
Standard.
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, so that went in. Unfortunately, Val came down with COVID and she's been struggling with it quite a lot. So our communications have gotten a little gummed up. My hope is that that'll be coming out next week and that that'll, keep the conversation rolling and keep some of the excitement going about it. It's a big change and it's really exciting.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're only a month in, maybe not even that long, in terms of the official announcement. At some point, it'd be useful to kind of look back and see, did we get the things that were expected? So, more people checking out books or like returning and becoming patrons of a library within the system, where maybe they hadn't before. So, we can talk about maybe what that would look like going forward, but just maybe something to think about in terms of how to kind of gauge, the hopefully really significant benefits that this policy had.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, if you want to start keeping a record of some of the things that you're interested in or some of the concerns that you want to track or things that you're looking to look at, as far as the CERT numbers and things that are involved, it's pretty easy for us to track that. We don't have to set up separate systems for it. A lot of that's reflected in Polaris. So yeah. I would like to know kind of what you're looking for and we can start pulling some of those.
Yeah, okay, cool.
And I think the one outcome would be that with some of the 5 libraries that still in the county have fines, go fine free. That would be a nice outcome.
Just one other thing regarding the central report, I wanted to convey to Renee so that you can convey to staff. There were so many instances of staff going a little bit beyond to be helpful to people. We're spending a lot of extra time, so I'm sure the board agrees to convey to staff that the board greatly appreciates what they've been doing.
I don't have any questions about any of the other reports except for financial. But I don't know, so we've got the member directors, branch highlights, central highlights, operations report. Member services, which is Amanda. Hearing no questions, I think that's a good sign.
We have one on the budget.
So do I.
Oh.
So budget,
You
go
go
ahead.
first.
No, you go first.
Well, a question for Christian. Do we have any sense of when we might fill the jobs to enable makerspace?
Right now, we're gonna be bringing on the teen librarian, that will free that up a lot. You know, we've been talking about that, I've been talking about that with Renee for a while now. The problem is that even though the COVID aspect of the makerspace isn't really an issue for us anymore, it's a very hands-on thing, it's a very high-touch thing. So I think what we're gonna be looking at is maybe opening the makerspace for like discrete sessions and having programs and that kind of stuff, but just leaving it doors open.
Yeah, no,
It provided a lot of trouble for us. Yeah, okay.
So much to be damaged. If
Yep,
People
yep.
don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, well, Trudy's on board now, and she's got a lot of knowledge about this stuff, and we're in the process of hiring a YA librarian as well. I think that will open up a lot as well. Renee, that's pretty accurate?
Yeah, I mean, it is technically open now, but I've offered it to all the librarians to programming in there. So I think Trudy's gonna be part of the first teachers there, but we're definitely using it. Just won't be enough.
Usually a few times to our advantage, if you remember, budget time. Leaking some, you know,
Oh, yeah.
when David Knapp was president or chairman of the legislature. He was a West Point grad, so we made him a copy of, when I say we, I didn't have anything to do with it, except I suggested it might be a good thing. They made him a model of Mikey Stadium, which is an athletic facility at West Point. He was thrilled with it. And I mean, that's not like supported the budget, but it did hurt. Yeah, good stuff.
They're really compelling. I was actually at Fayetteville doing a visit yesterday, and I walked through their makerspace. The action was slow, but people were using it, so it's on the radar for sure. You just kind of got to be careful about how we reopen it. It was a little bit of a problem spot for us for a little while, so we want to make sure we don't have trouble. That's important.
So my question for the budget is about library books and materials, so 693,230. And I'm assuming that we prepay a lot of things at the start of the year? Or we do like a massive book buy at the start of the year?
Purchase orders. Set up. That's those come. Once it gets those purchase orders.
You have fund balance numbers yet? For last year?
Not yet.
What was the question, Ed?
I don't have numbers.
Fund
No.
balance,
Oh.
31.
Any other budget questions? So that brings us down to the resolution.
So we'll report from Kim.
Oh, so Kim, yes. There's a piece of paper in here.
Or there's the next author.
The next
I didn't know if there
author.
was Anything else?
Angela,
We did announce next season.
you want to
Yeah.
announce next?
Yes, well, first of all, we had a wonderful evening last night with Fran Leibowitz, if any of you were there. It was quite an event, the biggest turnout we've certainly had in a long time. But anyway, yes, we did announce our our next season's authors. And you can find them on the Facebook. I think that Kim included a handout for you folks in the information. We have Britt Bennett, who wrote The Vanishing Half, I believe. And I'm doing this from memory. I should know it since I had to say it often enough. Yusef Salam, who's one of the Central Park Five, which should be pretty interesting. We have Casey McQuiston. We have Kate Quinn, who's a historical novelist. We have Gary Trudeau, who's the Doonesbury cartoonist. And we end with Jill Lepore. So it's quite an eclectic group of authors, and it certainly got a good response last night at the meeting. I don't know who was there, Jill, if you were there. I think you were on, you might have been online.
Yes, that was online. It was-
Yeah, people evidently recognize most of the authors, which was good to hear.
Britt
Which
Bennett,
was, pardon?
Britt Bennett, I think. I don't know if you mentioned him.
Yeah,
First
yeah,
author.
Britt was the first one. Yeah, I think it's The Vanishing Half. She's the first one that's going to speak. And I would just encourage you, if you've got, and Kim and I would encourage you. I told Kim to take a break today. It's amazing the amount of work that's involved in putting something like this on. But anyway, if you're already subscribers, please renew. And if you're not subscribers, I would encourage you. I think it's really eye-opening to see some of these, listen to some of these authors. They bring you to places that you probably never knew about before or understood before. And last night was a perfect example with Fran.
Angela, thank you. And last night was wonderful, so I'm glad that I heard that you sold 400 more tickets recently, and so that was great.
Yeah.
Anything else for Focal?
Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so is the only resolution is the challenge policy. So do we need a motion before we discuss? If there's any discussion.
I'll move it as amended with Fred.
Okay, Sam and Bet, there's a slight change that's probably in your email. It's not a huge change, but it's just one sentence that was supposed to be in the document that wasn't there. So I have, sorry, you,
I
someone
moved
second?
it. Was I don't think it was
Anybody
seconded
second?
I can second. I did. Thank you.
So I have 3 questions. They might not require changes. So there's a quote up front that's Libraries of American Value. Is that from ALA, or is that from a magazine, or is that from?
That's a,
Okay, I was just thinking of it as from a person reading that they might not know where that is. Okay. Looking at the website, we don't have a head of central or head of branches. Is that? Looking at the website, I don't see someone with the title head of central and head of branches.
some of the titles are out there. Check the power about updates, some of that stuff.
Okay. Okay, so those are the questions. And then the last question is, second to last paragraph says, if not, the director's decision will stand as final, and if so, the decision of the board following a hearing will be final. And reading this as someone who doesn't know the process. I was confused by the if not. So if not, if the complaint is not satisfied,
But not a formal hearing. The formal hearing is not merited, the director's decision is final.
okay.
Make any changes, so we have to leave it on the table for the next meeting, or can we make changes immediately?
Yeah, I think we can make edits, minor edits, because we're not changing the intent of the document.
Resolved with minor corrections.
Can I ask a quick question about just what we're looking at here? Can I just have a little bit more context about what we're reviewing here versus what because we approved a resolution around something related to this a couple of months ago, with the idea being that there was an existing policy around book challenges already. Is that correct, or am I off on that?
Hey, Sam, this is Christian. Just to update, the conversation we had earlier was regarding pretty much the same policy, but this policy lived within a larger collection development plan that was out of date and not really very accessible, and literally about 20 years old. So what we've done here is we pulled the policy that we've been utilizing, really not significantly changing it, but making it an independent standalone policy, so that if people are asking, hey, I want to see the book challenge policy, we're not referencing them to a 1995 collection development guide where on page 12, there's a few pages about the policy. This pulls it out so that we can address it more immediately.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's good context. Thanks.
Thanks.
I have one other question, but can wait until other things are asked.
Go ahead.
I think the main thing is I'm interested in if we feel like there's any use to have public reporting around decisions or complaints made. I think right now the way that it's written is that the complainant would get the report, and I guess that if it made it to the board, there would be some record of it publicly. But do we feel like there should be any other level of public reporting required?
My recommendation to the board would be no, based on what we've seen, which is that when these things hit the news, they tend to generate more fire, not less. And my personal preference would be that we just kind of let it come and go in the night and not really encourage others. Because what you see is, you don't typically see people say, wow, that was a really good and well thought out response from the library. You see a, wow, I didn't know the library had porn on the shelves, and then it kind of escalates up from there. So my preference would be that we not do reporting. I don't know of anybody who does do reporting. I'm not familiar with the library system that does do it, which isn't to say that it doesn't happen. I'm just not familiar with it. And my main concern would be that there would be an aspect of privacy for the patron that would be involved as well, right? So if I decide that I really hate the Holy Bible and I want to challenge the Holy Bible, I don't know that I want people to know in my community that I've challenged that, especially if it comes back as negative. So I would just say that to me, this is a private interaction with the patron until such time as they make it not private.
But I don't suggest we make it public, but my question is whether it isn't a matter of public record that would be this story. So in days we had newspapers. and it's something you got, it's closed. No?
Oh, yeah, that's.
Well, I mean, they can foil anything, but I don't know that this is again, for me, this comes into, and maybe I'm wrong, Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, this seems like a privacy issue around the patron who's making the challenge. That I would, I personally would want to protect the patron's privacy, even if they disagree with me.
So maybe just two things on there. I mean, I think I generally agree, especially if we're saying like, nope, you made this complaint, we're not accepting your, like, we aren't going to remove the material. I think it probably doesn't need to be reported, at least not the specific ask. It may make sense to have like an aggregate count of how many complaints have happened and how many have been approved or disapproved or whatever that language would be. So that's one. The second thing is I do kind of feel like if we're removing materials based on a complaint, that may be something that we should be reporting publicly on, even if we aren't saying who the specific complainant was. I think if we're removing materials from the library, we have a responsibility to say that it happened and why.
There will be a lot of heat around it.
I want to follow up on that, so I apologize, I wasn't here last week. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I hope this is a solution in search of a problem. So was it discussed, realistically, substantively, have we had any meaningful challenge in any substantive way?
Sure. Well, so the reason why this is coming up is that on a national scale, we're seeing it a lot. So you're familiar with that. We had one kind of proximate challenge. I received an email from an English teacher. They were concerned about a particular book. I was able to get some feedback from staff about what
in the general collection.
Yeah, well, it's actually upstairs in the adult reference collection. It's a book called Genderqueer. It's often categorized as a YA title. We have it in the adult collection. That solved her concerns. Her feeling was that kids were going to trip over pornography. Not having read the book, not really being familiar with it, that was her concern. I told her it's upstairs in the adult section. Done. We were done. Okay. So I'm happy to report those to you folks if you'd like, and I'm happy to keep a record of them.
Isn't that more classification and that it is substantive about the material itself? It's more just about management, of access as opposed to, right?
Yeah, I mean, we ask a librarian. Well, I'll tell you, the team will find it. If they want to find a book, whether or not it's in the YA section or the adult section, they'll find it. And for this retired English teacher, that was enough to settle her concerns, which is fine by us too.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm asking is, realistically, have we had any substantive challenge to a material that didn't go beyond access, that we shouldn't be circulating?
This one had that, but then we cut it off. But it didn't get to the challenge level. We haven't had a challenge. I don't have a challenge. This doesn't happen on a monthly basis.
That's what I'm.
In my career, in 20+ years, I've had displays be challenged. So I've had a couple of instances where like a Pride Month display will be challenged once quite formally at Queens. But that's very word of mouth and that kind of thing. An actual formal book challenge, I have not encountered one in my time in libraries. So hopefully that will.
So this is as much contemplating what's been occurring socially but not based on any meaningful.
This is preparing our campaign, and we've got these committees set up. Those people are following, those people are following the trends. They know what the issues are. We're really just prepared in case it comes down the pike at us, but it hasn't so far, and I don't anticipate that it will.
So Ed and I would like to propose 3 minor changes. The first one is in the first line to say from ALA, Libraries and American Values. Or from ALA's, apostrophe S, America's Libraries and American Values. So the person knows where to find it if they want to look it up. In the second to last paragraph, the second sentence, second line at the very end, to cross off or not.
say whether.
whether a formal hearing is warranted. And then in the next sentence, insert the word warranted. So if not warranted.
Okay, with those amendments or minor amendments, move it again.
Again,
With the, as amended.
as amended.
Yes.
Any other discussion?
Was there a resolution on reporting anything publicly? I guess I didn't get an answer on that.
So what I heard, Sam, was not to report things publicly due to privacy, and also not wanting to perhaps then cause more. I would also say that to cause more.
Open a Pandora's box.
Yes.
I'd say.
But there is some of a privacy issue around this. Also, if someone is issuing a challenge, if it does go to the board, then that would come, that would be public. If the person challenged the director and the committee's recommendation.
They feel it redact things, so anyway, we're forced to reveal.
We can know how many challenges, we can know, but I think, you know, trying to be respectful of a person's privacy.
Yeah,
who's
so I think at the very least, we should strongly consider that if there's materials being removed from public access from a library because of a complaint, that should be reported publicly. I mean, I think as much as someone has a right to privacy on their complaint, we also are saying that people have, you know, the right to get information, and this would be removing some ability to access some level of information. And so I think it's at least worth saying why that happened.
And I think this would, the results of the challenge do get reported to the board. And so it would, it should appear, I would think, in a report to the board. Which
Does
would
it?
make it,
It can
Oh,
go
he
forward,
can't
yeah,
see
I
the
mean,
changes.
forward.
He doesn't see that red change. Can you see a red change, Sam?
so
No.
in the document, there's
Yeah.
a line, there's a line that was not in one of the pre-reads that says the board will be notified of any formal written complaints and will be
Okay.
kept appraised through the decision-making process.
Okay, so if I wanted to then speak publicly about a question around that, I could do that, and that would be recognized somewhere. Okay, that sounds good. I didn't see that. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
I,
Sam gave us a thumbs up.
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed? Any more abstentions? So I need someone to make a motion so we can go into,
it's muted.
yeah,
Executive session, man, is muted.
Who, Rich?
Sam.
sure.
Sorry, I'm not
So-
prepared. I have to find this.
That's okay. Sam, I gave it to someone else.
Thank you.
I can read. Be it resolved. For Section 105 of the Public Officers Law, the board shall now move into executive session for the purpose of discussing let's see here, it's
Underlined
the employment history of a particular person.
at the bottom.
Well, I'm not good at this. Am I? I need to mention, what's the names at the
Yeah.
bottom. It says, attendance shall include non-board member Rich Engel and Christian Zabriskie.
Second.
Then seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
thank you. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, everyone else is released. And I will for those of you on Zoom, I'm going to move you into the waiting room